Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Learn at Lunch here at Fresno Pacific University. We are so happy that you are here today for our first Learn at Lunch to start off the new academic year. My name is Dr. John Clark, and I am the program director for the social work program here. And today we have with us the Fresno Interdenominational Refugees Ministry, some team members from that organization. And they are going to be talking today about building communities of hope with new Americans and talking about how their organization walks with refugees and immigrant communities in the Valley and ways that we can work with others. So, a little bio on the speakers. We have Isabella Olmos, who joined FIRM in February 2023 as a project specialist and became the community engagement manager in July. She's responsible for promoting community support for new refugee projects. Prior to FIRM, Isabella gained experience at several nonprofits across the Bay Area and California. She's a first-generation college graduate, having earned her Bachelor's of Science in Health Sciences, Public Health from California State University, East Bay, after graduating from Edison High School. We also have Paying He, BSW, who's a proud Roosevelt High and Fresno State graduate. She came to FIRM as a volunteer in response to the Somerset gas crisis, and the rest was history. She's fluent in Hmong, both green and white dialects. Ms. He has worked as a case manager, advocate, community organizer, and project coordinator before being promoted to program manager in the fall of 2019. As the program manager of FIRM's community building area, she has led the accreditation of FIRM's housing counseling services by HUD and resident leadership development initiatives. And finally, there is Christine Barker, who's a proud Roosevelt High and Whitworth University graduate. She has worked with refugees across 3 countries and 3 states. She started as an unpaid summer intern with FIRM in 2008, working with refugees' families from Wat Tham Krabak. I hope I said that right, the final Hmong refugee camp to be closed in Thailand. She also studied community development at the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa and public administration at Cornell University. Since rejoining FIRM as executive director, Ms. Barker has grown the budget, staff size, and reach by 200% and helped the organization become a contracted resettlement agency. So we're thankful to have all of them here. If you all have questions, and you can put them in the box. And I just realized that Dr. Manriquez was supposed to talk before me, but go ahead, Dr. Manriquez, sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Hi, my name is Professor Edgar Manriquez, and I am instructor of social work department here at FPU. I'll just be doing a little bit of housekeeping rules so we all can have this presentation and information provided to everyone. So throughout the presentations, we do have a chat and we do have a QA. So for the chat, it's just hellos, high fives. For a QA, you're gonna put in there your specific question that you have for the presenters. And at the end, within 45 minutes, we'll have the opportunity to answer those, read those questions and for the presenters to answer for you guys, okay? Just remember this session is and will be recorded. We ask you guys to keep it appropriate in those chats and those questionnaires. If it's something that's out of the norm, we'll probably just delete it. However, another thing is just a reminder that next month, October 4th, is it's already Hispanic Heritage Month, and we will have another expert speaker, Dr. Hu, from that will focus on the topic of mental health among Hispanic, Latino, Latinx communities. So look forward to that, and the floor is yours.
All right, I'm going to say a quick prayer and then you can start your presentation, all right? Because we are a Christian university, we want to integrate that into our Learn at Lunch. So God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come together and learn. I pray you bless the speakers today as they talk about such an important, have a conversation about working with immigrants and refugees. And God, I just pray that we can all have a heart for having welcoming arms and providing resources for people who need them, Lord. And we just thank you for another opportunity to learn and to grow. And we ask this in Jesus' name, amen. All right, the floor is yours, Firm. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Clark, Dr. Manriquez, Dr. Lopez, and the whole FPU team, Cy and Kimberly. Thank you so much. We are so excited to be the first presentation of this year's series. You heard our bios earlier. I'm Christine, I'm the director of FIRM. And if my team want to introduce themselves, so that everyone puts a face to the name that we heard the bios to earlier.
Good afternoon. This is Paying Her, a program manager with FIRM.
And hi, I'm Isabella Olmos, the community engagement manager at FIRM. And I'll let Christine take it away.
Oh, and you know what we were going to do? I just remembered. Each of us has a different undergraduate experience. Mine was in international studies and political science. Isabella was in
Public health and health sciences.
And Paying was?
I was with social work.
So we are a very interdisciplinary team. We'll notice there's a lot of themes of interness in all the ways that we are as FIRM. And so this is a outline of what we're hoping to cover in the next 35, 40 minutes. You'll learn a little bit about FIRM. We're going to discuss refugee and immigrant journeys with more of a focus on refugee and parolees, but a little overview on immigration policy writ large in our country. We're going to reflect and share a little bit about how we work interculturally in our community. And we're going to let all of you know how you can join the fun and joy of working with refugees and building a more welcoming community in our region. And then we'll do Q&A. So about us, FIRM stands for Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministries. And we were founded in 1994, almost 30 years ago, as a uniquely interdenominational partnership. And so what that means is that the original team of FIRM, there were many different denominations of churches that came together to work with refugees. And it was a really specific partnership between refugee pastors from the Hmong and Lao and Ukrainian and Ethiopian communities and local Western and white churches that had more resources to respond to refugee community needs and design programs that fit and were led by refugee community leaders. So that's how we started in 1994. And since then, we have grown significantly. And we serve diverse communities across the central San Joaquin Valley. So not just Fresno, but we have outreach that goes all the way up to Stockton, down to Visalia and Tulare County. And we work with a number of refugee and immigrant communities, including but not limited to Hmong, Lao, Cambodian, Ukrainian, other Slavic communities, Afghan, Central and Eastern Africa, and Syrian communities. And starting last year, we were approved to become a partner resettlement agency through this organization called ECDC, or Ethiopian Community Development Council, which is the only national resettlement agency founded by and led by refugees and immigrants, mostly from Ethiopia, but from throughout Africa. And we're just really excited to not just work with refugees and immigrants who find themselves and find their way to Fresno, but also be a part of walking with people from day one when they arrive to this country as refugees. So here is a map of the world. We started really focusing on Southeast Asian and Ukrainian communities as the biggest refugee communities in Fresno in the 90s. And we've really grown. And we also have seen an increased number of Latin American refugees and parolees recently. And so we also work with refugees and immigrants from Latin America as well. The Middle East, Afghanistan, our staff speak 14, 15 different languages. And so we'll talk more about that later, but we really do work with folks from all around the world, and we have staff who work, who come from all of these regions as well. So if you have heard this before, I'm looking at you, Central La Familia staff, then maybe wait a little bit, but I have some questions for all of you. The first question is, who is an immigrant? What does it mean to be an immigrant? What makes someone an immigrant? How do we define that? You can put it in the chat. I'm not a teacher, but I am good at waiting. Who is an immigrant? What makes a person an immigrant? All of us? Okay. Tell me more. What makes someone an immigrant? Okay. Coming from another country, a person who comes to live permanently in a foreign country, someone who is excluded from the in-crowd, anyone that moves to a different place than where they were born. Yes. And Lewis, a person born in a different country than where they're currently living. So some of these pictures are stolen from the internet. Some of these pictures are staff or friends or family of firmies, and anyone who lives in a different country than the one they were born in is an immigrant. So right now, my brother has cycled through 3 different immigration statuses in the last 6 months because he lives in London and he was on one kind of visa that didn't have permanent status, and then he was briefly without a visa, and now he is on an employment visa, so which leads to permanent status. And if any of us decided to move temporarily or permanently to another country, we would be an immigrant too. And some of you might have been born in a different country than the one you live in right now. But immigrant can be used in a lot of different ways, and sometimes in certain media it is used derogatorily as if there's something wrong or bad about moving. But migration is human. It is what people do. Borders are like a very recent invention in the long history of humans leaving what they know for unknown things in the hopes that it will be better or safer. And even when we think about Fresno County, according to the California Immigrant Data Portal, Fresno County, as long as it has been in the United States of America, has had a high percentage of people living here who were born in another country. And arguably, that 1860 should be higher than 13% because Fresno County was a part of Mexico, and before that, Spain. So there were a lot of changing nationalities around that point in time. The highest point when you think about percentages for Fresno County is that 25% of people in Fresno County were born in a country other than the United States in 1890. And the lowest point of immigration, of people living in Fresno County who were born in a country other than the US, was 1970. And so for you social workers who do some macro level work, hopefully you know that there were some pretty significant changes in the immigration system, both between 1920 and 1930, and between 1970 and 1980. And there were even more reforms in the refugee system between 1980 and 1990. And there was a pretty big thing that happened in the late 80s that allowed folks who had been working here in agriculture to have access to permanent residence and then bring their family members over. So maybe some of you were able to come to Fresno through your family due to the changes that we generally call amnesty that happened under Reagan in the 80s and through the petitions that were filed in the 80s and 90s. So migration is human. So always remember that. And immigration policy is super complicated, and immigration laws are super complex. And so even though there's kind of this basic idea that anyone who lives in a country other than the one they were born in is an immigrant, there are many different types of status that an immigrant might have in the United States or might not have. And so a visa is a stamp and a status that allows you to enter into a country. And so there are two major kinds of visas. And this is a huge simplification. I'm sure some of you know so much more about this. I'm going to do my best to be clear and not take up the whole time explaining the complexities of the US immigration system. I am not an immigration attorney. I cannot give immigration advice. But there are temporary statuses which let people enter, but may or may not let them work, and definitely don't let them stay or start their life. So you or some of your friends might know international students who got selected and approved to come to FPU as an international student, but they had to sign and promise and swear in an interview that they were going to go back to their country as soon as they were done with school. And they knew from the beginning that it's really, really hard to stay in the United States, even if you spent 4 years in a bachelor program and you have all of this skills and all of this education and all of these roots in Fresno. You don't get to stay on a temporary visa. But refugees and folks who come through, there are a couple permanent resident avenues, and this is very simplified. So there's also ways that family members can sponsor a relative to come, and that can be that can get you to permanent residence if a family member sponsors you. The fastest waiting line is for husbands and wives. And for brothers and sisters of adults, it can take 20, 30, 40 years, depending on what country of origin it is for the family visas. Employment visas are a lottery system that cost a lot of money, but businesses can sponsor people to get them visas. And some of those, so there's two kinds of employment visas. There are temporary ones, and then there's permanent ones. And then there's diversity lotteries, which is very tiny in the grand ocean of visa types. So the cleanest thing is these three on the bottom can become green cards, which give you legal permanent residence. And then once you have a green card, assuming that some bad stuff doesn't happen, within 4 or 5 years, depending on some other things, between 3 and 5 years, you can become a citizen. And once you are a citizen, you have the same rights as anyone else. You have the same rights as someone born here. You can vote, you can sponsor other people to come to join you. You can work without a work permit. You are a full citizen. And for folks who come on a temporary visa, there are some ways to stay, but they're really hard. So there are systems like TPS, which stands for Temporary Protected Status, which gives you a work permit, but basically says due to country conditions in the country that you were born in, it's not safe for you to be returned there. So you are temporarily protected, and you can work, but you don't have access to a green card, and you don't have access to this permanent residence or the protections that permanent residence or citizenship provide. Similarly with DACA, it's a 2-year, I'm not an expert on DACA, but it's a 2-year at a time deferral of deportation. So saying, I understand that I'm eligible to be deported, but for the next 2 years, I'm going to work and I want to do this other stuff. And that can get you access to work permit and other, some some benefits. And then there are a couple things for simplification purposes. There is asylum, U visa, T visa, and special immigrant juvenile visa that is available to some people, which does, when that is approved through the immigration system, then you become eligible for legal permanent residence and citizenship. And so I know there's this in and of itself could be an hour-long lecture, and I know there's a lot of rhetoric around immigration, but what I hope that each and every one of you knows already or takes away from this is that the system is really, really complex, and it's not like there is one line that if you stand in it long enough, you can become a US citizen. That doesn't exist. And an immigration attorney can give you immigration advice about what is the best decision for you or your family. All right, next survey question. Who is a refugee? What makes someone a refugee? Oops. Yeah. Someone who is displaced from their home. So displacement is part of it. Yeah. If you read Spanish, you might get some clues from this sign, which is from a park near the Casa del Migrante in Mexico City. Someone fleeing from a country. Yeah, so someone has to leave their country of origin for many reasons, potentially due to violence. Yeah. Yeah, leaving country. What are some other reasons why someone might have to leave their country and be considered a refugee? Displacement, okay. Terrorism, violent crimes, danger, allied to the US during the war. Yeah, okay. Yeah, political affiliation, seeking asylum. Yeah, okay. So fear of persecution. There it is, Stacy Guzman. Good to see you. Yes. So again, refugee is a word that is used in a lot of different ways in the media and in everyday conversation. And we often use it in a way that means, oh, they were refugees from the volcano, or they were refugees from the economic situation. But technically, in the current international law that we all work within, there is a very technical definition, which is someone who is unable or unwilling to return to their country of origin owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for some part of who they are. That could be race, that could be religion, that could be nationality, that could be membership of a particular social group or political belief or political party. And the UN or an international organization has to recognize them as such, and their country of origin has to be unwilling or unable to protect them from this persecution. And so we find ourselves working with people, maybe 100 people fled a war in a country. 30 of them fled because their house was destroyed by bombs, and they don't actually have a political opinion one way or the other, but they literally don't have a home anymore. Maybe 20 of them were a part of the insurgent group that said, like, no more, we can't, like, no more to this totalitarian, we want to be free. And they started a revolt. And now, because of their political opinion about the current government, it's not safe for them to go home because the government will literally kill them. Yeah, good job, Kendi. It could be someone is a part of a minority sect of a religion and the government turns a blind eye to persecution, or the government actively participates in the persecution of people who have this specific religion or set of religious beliefs. Sorry, I got off track with my numbers, but the point is 100 people could flee, but only the people who the current government will not be able to protect them from persecution, or the current government is actively persecuting them, will be really recognized as a refugee and be eligible for resettlement, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So everyone flees a war and only some people become technically refugees in the international law sense of this framework. And so for an example from the 70s and 80s, initially, actually, no, sorry, I'm not going to go down that road. And so when we talk about refugees, we're talking big picture refugees, everyone who doesn't have a home, everyone who's displaced in the world, who it's not safe for them to go home. And then we're talking about 110 million people currently displaced in our world today. So 110 million people don't have a home to go back to. It's not safe for them to be themselves wherever it was that they came from. And of those 110 million, over 85% of them are living in a neighboring country, primarily in the global south. So 85% of these 110 million people, they left their home, they left their hometown, they probably left almost everything they own behind, taking everyone in their family who they could. They might have had to leave family members behind. 85% of them are living in a neighboring country to the one that they left. And the US, do you remember earlier we talked about how in 1970 the immigration system changed a lot? So the US started our current refugee system first in the 70s, supporting refugees fleeing the Vietnam and the Vietnam War, the Secret War in Laos, and then later the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. So since then, over the last 50 years, pretty much, since 1975, yeah, almost 50 years, guess how many refugees the US has resettled in all of our abundance and all of our wealth and privilege and opportunity, knowing that there's 110 million people who are displaced today. Over the last 50 years, how many people do you think the US has resettled? 3%? Okay, I'll have to do some math now, Kizzy. Dr. Kizzy. What else? Give me some more answers in the chat. So 110 million. 5 million. 1 million. 10%. 35%. Oh, so generous. I love it. I love that vision that you have for us as a country, Mario. 15%, Andrew. I love it. Actually, Dr. Kizzy was right. It ended up being about 3 million people over the last 50 years. And in 2019, the US resettled a grand total of about 35,000 people. That's it. Out of the 110 million people who desperately need a safe place to start over, in 2019, we resettled about 35,000. It's so low, absolutely. And then when President Biden came into office, he did set really high targets and visions compared to 35,000. And he said we should be welcoming 100,000 refugees in a year, and then 125,000 refugees in a year. But due to a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment and anti-immigrant policy during the previous administration. It has taken a long time for the refugee system to rebuild. And so this year, 2023, we're on track to resettle about 56,000 people in our country, out of the 110 million people who need a new home. And in Fresno, so we are super excited. One of the reasons that we were able to become a resettlement agency is because the government and the 10 national resettlement agencies have been looking for partners in new cities like Fresno, and because we're trying to rebuild the infrastructure. And it's not just the government's job, it's not just firm's job, and it's not just any one person's job, but it really, in order to welcome refugees well, it takes all of us, and it takes an entire community. And so part of walking with refugees as firm is inviting everyone else to walk with us and learn and grow together. And so we are going to go next to, we'll talk about that at the end, Andrew, but that's a great question. I'm going to go next to Isabella, who is going to share a little bit more about the refugee journey, how the system works right now. Take it away, Isabella.
Yeah. So what does the refugee journey actually look like? There's a lot of steps involved in this process, and the first of which is actually fleeing the country. So you can be displaced, but you are not a refugee until you are outside of your country of origin and your country cannot protect you. The next step after this is registering with the UNHCR in order to be considered for resettlement. During this process, your claim is evaluated for how true it is and if you were really experiencing persecution. The next is the waiting period, which can last anywhere between 3 to 30 years. Most applicants are not selected, so 99% of refugees are never accepted for resettlement. And as Christine mentioned earlier, they mostly live in neighboring countries. And then on top of this, there is an additional screening, separate screening for refugees who are selected to resettle in the United States. This separate screening is the most intense, and the family has to retell their story and be evaluated all over again separately. And if selected for the US, the family is placed with one of 10 national resettlement agencies. And that's where we step in as a local one, as a partner of ECDC. And there are several services that FIRM provides as a resettlement agency. When a family is assigned to us, we prepare, we welcome, we sign them up for benefits and services, and we teach them how to settle into the United States. And within the first 90 days, it is our job to sign the family up for benefits, like I said before, enroll them in school, get them into an initial health screening, apply for Medicaid, and get them Social Security cards. And during this time, the family as a whole goes through cultural orientation services, and we guide them through just learning how to be here in the United States. And a lot clearly happens in the first 90 days, but it's not where it ends. And I'm going to pass it to Pei Ying to discuss how FIRM supports refugees beyond the 90 days.
Hello, everyone. Here at FIRM, we offer 4 program areas. As you can see, these four program areas are ways that FIRM welcomes and also walk with refugee for services and resources. We have our community building, which I am the program manager of. We do advocacy, organizing work, and this is where our HUD certified and HUD approved housing counseling program is under. We also have our COVID-19 emergency and response. We have our weekly vaccine clinic here at firm. We also have our wellness and welcome, which a lot of our one-on-one client support and conversation happens to go through during their navigation and translation. And literacy and learning, our literacy center, youth mentorship, ESL, and citizenship classes where our community gets to be a part of a continuous learning with their young ones. Here at Firm, we offer a diverse, I think Chrissy mentioned earlier, we offer diverse range of language up to 14, 15 maybe, or maybe even more in these 4 program areas. For example, we have Hmong, Lao, Khmer, Slavic, Russian, Arabic, Dari, French, Congolese, Spanish, and many more. We are always looking for ways to grow and learn with the community that we serve. Again, my name is Paying Her. I have a background in social work, and in the last 7 years, I've been in many different roles here from before becoming the program manager. And just a little bit about myself, being first generation Hmong American with refugee like parents and family. Um, Navigating system have always been challenging for my family and I grown up. So the ways that I was taught on navigation and how to access resource worked for me and my family. But I realized that that didn't really work for the community, the refugee community that I work with their firm. And just being a part of firm, I would have to relearn new skills to understand refugees, the refugee and community, um, immigrant community that I work with and that firm worked with. And on this slide, you will see that these are some ways that we build our program to connect and build a relationship through intercultural work. Um, at Firm, we recognize the importance of effective communications and language access. I talked a little bit about our 14, maybe 15 languages that we have here at Firm. We do employ individuals who are bilinguals to ensure that clients can fully understand and participate in the services that we provide. Firm staff make efforts to learn key phrases and greetings and languages spoken by clients that they serve, and we encourage our volunteers and interns to do so. For example, in the Khmer and Lao, and maybe 1 or 2 other cultural community that we put our hands together just to show everyone. We put our hands together at the chest, kind of like this. Um, and and this is a first formal meeting by doing so and saying hello in English, or if you know Lao and Khmer. We do speak those languages at firm if we do know, and this is a gesture that is welcoming, and then this is also the start to building relationship at firm. So that's just an example of something that you will see many of the staff, Christine, myself, or Isabella doing at firm to welcome our clients. Firm staff are culturally responsive, and we seek to develop deeper understandings of different cultures, custom, values, belief of the individuals and the communities. We approach our clients with respect and avoid making assumptions based on bias and stereotypes. We understand the importance of working together with clients and community. Firm is always actively involved with clients in decision making process, and we seek their inputs in designing intervention and implementations of programs. This can be done through community forum and workshops, which Firm is done so many in the past and will continue to do so. This practice ensures that services are tailored to the needs and the strength of the community that we work with. firm engages in an ongoing self-reflection and self-awareness to identify their own bias and assumptions and privilege. We continuously educate ourselves about the different cultures by participating in spaces that allow us to engage and observe. For example, this is done by um, our our workshops from community events, and we usually sit in and listen to individuals, especially during our one-on-one mentoring and client sessions. Reflection activities are a part of our weekly firm staff meetings and monthly staff development activities, as we are always learning. Firm staff advocates and empower the right and the needs of refugees and immigration communities. We empower individuals and communities by providing them resources and information and opportunities to enhance their self-determination and decision-making abilities. Basically, we are supporting our client voices, and we are here to support our client voices. So by implementing culturally responsive practices, social workers can build trust to enhance community and improve outcomes for individuals, communities from diverse cultural background. Community events are hosted by firm to bring in the refugee community and immigration community together. And here are some ways that you can also get involved with firm. Our annual events are our National Poison Prevention Week, World Refugee Day, Back to School event, Trunk or Treat, Thanksgiving, and our Toys for Tots. If you are ever interested in connecting with the refugee communities, Isabella can share more about it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And so when we think about service, we try to break it up into 3 main domains, which you can see on the slide. The first of which is welcoming, and our welcoming roles include coming to the airport to greet a family, bringing signs, flowers, or smiles, helping with an apartment setup, which is moving furniture, setting up the family's new home, or cooking a culturally appropriate hot meal. The next is guiding, which is a fantastic way to gain experience at firm and with clients. You can mentor a teenage refugee, teach families how to ride the bus, help them apply for jobs, and you can also tutor during our K-6 after-school program, or even practice English conversation. These are especially great opportunities for students looking to gain experiences and grow their resume. And lastly, but most importantly, we have advocating. You can become an ambassador for firm. You do outreach, public education, but this looks differently for everyone. And, say you have a really big network, a lot of people who would want to do a fundraiser for us or a donation drive or just get involved in different ways. And that's amazing. And that's what we're really looking for, is to get people involved, to spread the word. And we just want to add this in. We are happy to write letters of recommendation and serve as references for students who volunteer for us. And that brings us to our volunteer information session that is happening tonight. I briefly went over the different opportunities we currently have, but I really want to encourage everyone who can come to this tonight, because we'll be talking about like what each of those things look like, time commitment, and then like volunteer onboarding. Yeah, so please come through, take a picture of this. We would love to see you, get involved, and yeah, thank you so much.
Here we go. Now I can unmute. All right. So thank you so much, Paying and Isabella. We are happy to take any and all questions that you might have for us. I'm going to start with the question earlier about our agrarian culture from Andrew Baraza. Yes, I think historically Fresno's agrarian landscape has been very attractive to refugees who have come from rural areas and have some experience growing things. So I think when the Hmong and Lao and Cambodian refugees came to the United States, the US tried to spread everyone out really, really, really thinly. And what they found is that no one wants to live far away from their family. People want to be together. And so places like Fresno, Merced, Sacramento, all attracted secondary migration, or maybe not secondary, but third or fourth or fifth location migration, as a place where families could be together, families can grow their own food, and also farm and make money farming. The Twin Cities also is a big destination for Southeast Asian and other refugee families due to the abundance of manufacturing jobs, and they got a lot of money in Minnesota for programs and nonprofits and opportunity.
There was a question about if you all serve Tulare County, places like Exeter and some of the
Ivanhoe.
Ivanhoe.
Yeah, so we do outreach throughout Tulare County, and we do have some clients who come to Fresno from Tulare County. We do not currently have an office in Tulare County. We do something we didn't talk about earlier is that many times when refugees come, they actually know someone in the US already, which is called their US tie. And so when they are interviewing back at, let's see if I can, come on. No. When they are interviewing in this final stage here, US will ask them like, oh, do you have a US tie? And then they say, yeah, my cousin lives in Fresno, or my cousin lives in Sacramento. And then the US will call the person and be like, are you really this guy's cousin? Are you going to help him out? Like, are you able to support him? And depending on what the person says, the family may need, the family may be resettled close to the cousin. But if the cousin's like, I met that guy like 10 years ago, he's not really my cousin, he's just like my cousin's cousin's cousin, I can't help him, I got enough problems, then the family may or may not be resettled closely. So we do have some refugees who are coming in from Central America who have US ties in Visalia, Bakersfield, and we are expecting more in the coming years. Mario has a question. Sorry if that's supposed to be anonymous, sorry. I don't know that we need a location at the moment. We do a lot of community-based work, but if you have a location, I'd be happy to hear about it. Maybe not right now in front of everyone else, though. This is my email. If you want to email me, Mario, I'd love to hear more. Yeah, let's chat. Any other questions about, I know we covered a lot. We talked about immigration policy, we talked about refugee policy, we talked about how FIRM works, and we talked about how you all can join in. Andrew, I don't know the answer to the MSW field placements. I will say we don't have, yeah, Edgar's got it. Great. Edgar, do you want to answer that question live? Oh, and I see Dr. Clark's.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I got it. Here, and Dr. Clark. Yeah, historically we do have a contract with the firm. Historically, we've had a BSW interns conduct their internship. Those that are interested as international social work or working with the immigration population, and I have worked with Payne in the future. So nice to see you again. So regarding the MSW program, this is our new program, so it's something that we need to clarify with Patricia Salas, our field placement coordinator. So thank you.
Yeah, I was just, and the question I was just having is tying in the spirituality component, or like what religion do most of the people that you work with come from, and then how have churches responded to, you know, being able to partner with and work with people in the community?
Yeah, great questions. And Firm was founded at the beginning as really this partnership between refugee churches and Western churches with more money to spare than refugee churches. And I just think, especially, I think there's so many different ways that churches have supported refugees in the last 30 years that Firm's been around, and in the really since the 80s, when a lot of Southeast Asian and Ukrainian refugees were coming to Fresno. And Firm has done lots to help people, but when I think about everything that each church has done to help communities, like what Firm can provide really pales in comparison. And so, for example, when the Ukrainians were paroled in across the border, which, as we remember, is not a permanent status, the temporary status, there were hundreds and hundreds of Ukrainians that were being paroled across the border from Tijuana about a year and a half ago. And Ukrainian Slavic churches set up impromptu refugee camps on the border in Tijuana and literally took in Ukrainians into their own homes. And so there's two main Slavic churches in Fresno, and both of them did pretty much every family in the congregation had a Ukrainian family move in with them, whether or not they knew them before, whether or not they were relatives, whether or not there was space for them. The hospitality that the Slavic churches provided was truly unparalleled. And for the Ukrainians, they weren't eligible for benefits for at least 2 months, and then they had to apply for work permits after that. So it ended up being 9 months to a year of Ukrainians living in apartments, in small houses, in RVs in someone's backyard, in all of this like really temporary housing, but rooted in hospitality and in responding to what the needs are. And so we do have lots of partnerships with refugee and immigrant churches that refer clients to services at Firm. We're especially good at doing the systems navigation support. And we have longtime churches that support us financially every month. But I think the support that refugee and immigrant faith leaders provide within the communities, really, it humbles me every single time I think about it. Like, we could only dream of being that generous within the confines of grant funding and donations and all that other good stuff. The majority of refugees that are coming today are Muslim refugees. There are some religious minority refugees who are coming from former Soviet states, so Pentecostal, Jehovah's Witness, evangelical, coming from Belarus, Armenia, Ukraine. Well, not really Ukraine, because there's a war which messes everything up. And then we have a growing number of Latin American refugees that are arriving, who are either evangelical or Catholic for the most part, I would say. Okay. So the next question was, did I answer that all the way, or did
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so Brisa, so I think the best way to get connected is to give us a call. There's a lot of work that we're able to do over the phone that doesn't require transportation, and especially with there's a new DSS system called Benefits Cal, so we can now apply for benefits in, I want to say, 49 out of the 54 counties in California. And we also try, some programs are able to provide transportation, and we're also working to increase our volunteers to help with transportation, especially for group events and things like ESL class, so that folks can increase their access to English and other services. Oh, there's a survey. Yeah, I think the best way to get connected is to give us a call. I will also say, if you know any Central Americans who have minor children still in Central America that they would like to sponsor, applications are now open for the Central American Minors Program, which would be a whole nother hour-long presentation. So I'm not going to go into details, but we are able to help parents apply, parents or guardians, apply to bring minor children directly from Central America, so they don't have to cross, and they don't have to go through all of the risk that comes with crossing. So yeah.
All right, well, our time is ended at this, but we want to thank you for coming out and sharing, and for all the things that we learned, and just appreciate what your organization does, and it's a needed resource / ministry / everything else that you do. The needs never go away, and so I just encourage everybody who's here today to, if you're not volunteering for firm, but just make people aware of it, and make people aware of their organization and what they do. And once again, we thank you for what you do in the community, and for taking your time out to be with us today. And be sure, everybody, to fill out your survey, and for the Learn at Lunch. And we thank everybody for being here today. Thank you.
And finally, remember that our next Lunch at Learn will be October 4th. It's usually the first Wednesday of every month. And once again, the topic is regarding the Hispanic Latino Heritage Month on mental health communities. So we look forward to seeing you guys next month, and we are approving internship hours. Thank you once again, everybody. Take care, be safe. Adios.